Hello and welcome to Coffee with Carrie. Carrie, are you crazy? You want me to approach people in a grocery store? What am I supposed to say to strangers in a grocery store? I don't know. Are you not paying attention? Didn't you see the title? I'm going to give you the lines and tell you what you should say. And by the way, you shouldn't be freaked out by talking to strangers, because if you've been listening to me for the last couple years or any length of time, you know that I want you out there talking to strangers all the time, every day, every time you leave your house and go out in public. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself here, so let's just get organized and talk about meeting people at the grocery store and the things you might say to take that to the next level. That's it all interesting? Hope you don't go anywhere, because that's what's on the agenda. But to finish up that conversation about talking to strangers, you should be making it a point to talk to random people that you don't know. It's so that it becomes second nature to you. You're going to start with elderly people who will always welcome a polite conversation. And then you're going to work your way up to people of the gender that you desire to date. So that when you find yourself in the presence of somebody you're actually attracted to, creating a conversation out of thin air is going to be second nature to you. Have you not been doing this? If not, please get started tomorrow. I don't know what you're waiting for. It's magic. This is indeed a co-ed episode about grocery store. I hate the word pickup lines, but let's embrace it. Grocery store pickup lines and flirting at the grocery store without being creepy, hopefully. It's not that I'm not listening. I have heard some of you guys say that women just look at you strangely or ignore you, even walk away with an odd look on their faces if you even try initiating conversations. But I would ask that you remember my one client, male, early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, who was really on a mission to find himself someone to marry. Besides hiring me as a matchmaker, he would spend a couple hours every weekend at a grocery store talking to women and acquiring phone numbers, so that he would have at least one date the following weekend. He would set out for one or two stores early in the day, then, do whatever he wanted with friends, get home, get changed, and meet a woman for a date who he'd connected with via this method the previous weekend. It worked for him. Based on that alone, I'd encourage you to give it a try. Let's give a little attention to your negativity before we move on in a positive spin, which is, I understand that some people are just not friendly, have no sense of humor. We don't want to meet them anyway. They're not the people we're looking for. You've also complained that, you guys, that sometimes you're not even sure who's single. Where do I start? I can't tell who's married or single or taken. I'm going to say, use your best judgment here. Always check their left hand for a ring, engagement, wedding, and maybe even check out what's in their cart to see if it looks like it's food for a family of 4 or definitely the cart of a single person. Yeah, I have a story. This leads me to a story. I remember being a cashier at a large grocery store chain called Dominic's back in my late teens, early 20s. The first location I worked at was near an apartment complex that was mostly senior citizens. My grandmother actually ended up living there years later. And it was also across the street from the area's biggest mall. So a wide range of customers. I was transferred when my family moved, and this next store was also near a huge apartment complex. These apartments were known for being where a lot of singles who worked as flight attendants and pilots out of O'Hare were living. Huge pool parties on the weekends, barbecues, lots of rumors, really, that would swirl around. So there was this one guy who went through my line one Saturday, 4 p.m. This is my example, by the way, of your cart contents informing other people of your lifestyle or your intentions, because there was certainly no question about this chap's evening plans. On the conveyor belt, he carefully placed a large floral-scented candle in a jar, a cheap bottle of wine, 2 steaks, and a box of condoms. Okay, so moving on. Some people are just negative, a bit of a downer, and will not be receptive to your friendliness. But what are we going to do about them? Nothing. Just move on and ignore them. Leave them in their small little worlds and find somebody friendly and receptive. No big loss, as we used to say Big whoop-de-doo. I'm definitely going to give you exact lines that you can use or that will hopefully inspire you to create your own. You have to know that these are based on my personality and things that I would feel comfortable saying. Some I picked up on the internet or amended from that. But if they don't sound like you to you, you're going to have to edit them or use them as a guide to create openings of your own. I think it's just really important that these feel natural to you. It's going to be strange, obviously. You're talking to a stranger, but the person you're talking to is going to know by the smile on your face that you're aware of the fact that this is weird. But they should also be able to sense that you are also in on the joke. That is really, really important. If you come across as too sincere or too earnest, the humor of the situation gets lost and it's not going to have the impact that we want. But anybody with a sense of humor is going to know by the smile on your face that you too are bemused by the whole thing. I'm trying to tell you that it's not going to work unless you deliver it in a way where you make it really clear that you're both in on the joke, that you're picking up somebody in a grocery store. You know what I'm saying? Okay, with that out of the way, do you know if they sell organic Oreos here? You see what I mean? They have to have a sense of humor, because if they're just thinking, why is a stranger talking to me in the grocery store? This is going to go right over their head. But obviously, there's no such thing as organic Oreos. That's ludicrous. Okay, keep that in mind. That's a really good one, by the way. But as I said, feel free to make it your own and create whatever amusing questions that you feel reflect your personality. Did you ever notice that grocery store music is just perfect for slow dancing with a stranger? Me personally, I'm in a pantomime ballroom dancing or something for a brief moment to add impact. I'm not going to put out my arms to create an invitation for dancing. I'm just looking for a smile and an opening to start a conversation. I might even be prepared with something about my two left feet, or how I was thinking about taking a dance class, but it would likely not be ballroom dancing, but hip hop. And if I heard hip hop in the grocery store, that would really be a different shopping experience. Or maybe I'd share a fact that I happen to know about the creation of music. I could share that story. My goal is to keep the conversation going, and then I'd feel more comfortable asking if they'd like to grab coffee sometime, or asking for a phone number because we've interacted already. As you might know, that first date is never going to be coffee, like I just said, because coffee dates suck. But that's the easiest thing and very non-threatening as an option to set on the table in this scenario. Later on, I might suggest something more fun or a cool place to grab something to eat, a bite to eat. But for our purposes here, coffee is a great suggestion for a future meetup. Some of these are a little bit more advanced. You're going to have to know your level, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or an advanced grocery store flirter. Choose accordingly. I've had a fantastic time with you. I was wondering whether you wanted to be the one to choose or plan our second date. Well, this has been super fun. Do you want to plan the second date for us? You get the drift. This one is perfect if it's delivered as you're walking out of the store or approaching the checkout line at the same time, especially if you acknowledged each other somewhere else in the store. So it's kind of like you were doing this together. So while you were actually shopping, you saw each other and maybe gave each other a look, and now you've arrived at the end of your grocery store adventure at the same time. So here's a line that's for beginners. It's actually my mom's. She uses it all the time. I've used it too, for real. Neither of us in flirting situations, which is how you know it's pretty benign and it will work to start a conversation. I usually say, like, I'm sorry, but what do you make with that? Mom will always say, I'm not familiar with that. How do you prepare that? Or how do you cook that? That's typically used in the produce section when somebody's choosing something that isn't familiar to you, that you don't usually buy. You don't even know what it is. This one is best in the pet food aisle, in front of the cat food. You find somebody who's at the cat food. You also pick up a can and you say something like, let you in on a little secret. I don't even own a cat, but I rescue one at least once a week. Non-threatening, very charming. Lots of opportunities to riff off of this one. This next line is executed, ideally not in the produce section, but perhaps near the chips or the cookies, near the non-healthy food choices. Junk food aisle, that's perfect. I'd say best even. I'm trying to convince myself that Doritos are healthy. Chips Ahoy, healthy? What do you think? I'm trying to convince myself that Cheetos are healthy. What do you think? Let's now channel that single pilot from the grocery store and be inspired by his dinner choice, at least. This is in the meat section now, and we're going to pick up 2 steaks and say, this one, as written on the internet, says, I have 2 steaks here that are marked best if used by tomorrow. Any chance I can make you dinner? That is super bold, a bold move, and for advanced students only, mostly because you're literally skipping right to asking someone for a date from being total strangers. So I'm not recommending you start with this unless you are super confident about pulling it off. My gut feeling on this is that I would want there to already have been a sign that there's an attraction between the two of us elsewhere in the store before pulling this line out. I just have a feeling that it would fail, for me at least, unless I knew that they were attracted to me in some way already. But another variation on this line is, I'm looking at the Best By date here, and I was wondering if you happen to be free on Saturday. That one has a little buffer built in. You're not actually inviting somebody to your place for dinner, which I never would recommend for a first date. And you could, in fact, do a switcheroo and do something completely different on Saturday if they offer you their phone number. Back to something a little bit more intermediate, I think, and let's use my client's method. He would basically be pretty forthcoming with the fact that this woman has caught his attention, and he'd say something like, I'd be really disappointed with myself if I left and I didn't at least find out if you were single. I'm about to leave. I saw you over in the produce section, and I know I'd be kicking myself later if I didn't at least come over and see if you were single. I know that I'd be kicking myself later on if I didn't at least say hello, introduce myself, and find out if you're single. My name's Carrie. It's not super clever. It's not super witty. And she can always say no. Not everybody is going to be super friendly or receptive to conversations while shopping. I can assure you that nobody has ever been insulted by receiving a compliment, especially when it's unexpected. I still talk about a man who walked up to me at the Saks Fifth Avenue outlet and told me that I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen in person, and then proceeded to walk away. Had I been single, I can assure you that I would have meandered through the men's section where he was shopping on my way to the shoes. Most people have a story like this, a compliment from 5 or dozens of years ago that they still remember to this day. That should tell you something. Also, there are people who 30 years later still regret not saying something to a man or a woman that they saw or met briefly because they were afraid or embarrassed about taking a chance. Let's venture into the middle aisles for a line you can use here. They are looking at something in an aisle somewhere, looking at the same thing in that same aisle. So you're nearby. It's not like you have to run down the aisle to deliver this line. So you're close enough and you see that they're examining something, maybe even reading a label. You approach from a short distance away, pick up another brand of the same item and say, this is actually the best brand. And you just kind of hold it out in front of them. This opens up a conversation by being helpful, pointing out this one's actually better if you're buying this. Also, ideally, they're reading labels or not sure. It's not like they're reaching for their favorite cat food and you go, no, that's not the brand for your cat. You made an attempt to open up a conversation. Keep your wits about you so that you can actually continue that conversation in a playful manner, because that's really what it's all about. Flirting is really just being playful. If it doesn't go well, there's no reason to let your smile even disappear or to slink away. This is an improv. Not everybody's fantastic when they first start doing improv. Your best response to it not working out is to continue smiling, chuckle at the absurdity, just go about your business. There's no shame in your game, I can assure you of that, and it's a game. Okay, before we wrap this up with a couple more, I think that there are some important points to consider. This is not the time to be searching for your fantasy woman here in the grocery store or fantasy guy. If you see someone that looks nothing like anybody you've ever dated, and you're a beginner at this type of off-the-cuff conversation, then that's not who you're approaching as a stranger in a grocery store to start. Pickup lines in general come with inherent risk, even a little more in a grocery store than, say, like a lounge, a club, or a bar where it's perhaps dark. So let's not make it even more awkward and add even more reasons to turn this into an opportunity for somebody to say no or reject us in some way. But again, as a reminder, we don't really care if they do. We aren't going to win them all, and we have nothing to lose, so we're taking the gamble. Okay, we've made it to the dairy section, which is strange because the eggs are right here, and eggs are not dairy. Huh. Any questions about eggs is totally acceptable because it's very confusing. What do all these terms actually mean? Free range, pasture raised, cage free, organic. Asking someone to help you make sense of this is probably not even going to be seen as flirting. So use that as you see fit and to your advantage. By the way, certified humane is the best option unless, of course, you share your yard with your own chickens. And also maybe flip it around the other way and let somebody else know this one's actually not certified humane. Or let them know that cage-free just means they're all packed together in a huge space with 1 foot of their own personal space. Or that free range really just means that they have like 6 feet of outdoor space that they could enjoy if they somehow could get 8,000 chickens out into a 6-foot square area. So certified humane. I wish my township here or my city would let me get a chicken, but alas. How about a few honorable mentions? Did you know that kale is actually not an aphrodisiac? At the magazine rack, we're at the end of our shopping experience and we say, oh no, it's the end of the world, I guess. Again, a handsome man is actually not on my shopping list, but I can be spontaneous. Pretty bold. And then in the produce section, we have to mention this one. How do you know if these things are ripe? Trying to think of the different ways I test for ripeness. Do you know how to tell if these things are ripe? Obviously, best in the produce section. Just think cantaloupe, watermelon, avocado, corn on the cob even. Hard to know what's going on inside there. And if you want to be funny or ridiculous, pick up something that is quite obviously ripe or not. But I have another. This one is not actually for the grocery store, but if you're a person who on occasion visits your local farmer market and you're a man, I once heard a guy introduce himself by starting a conversation saying, I'm a man at a farmer's market. Of course I'm a catch. To a woman he'd already noticed and had smiled at beforehand. They ended up at the same place, and that was the conversation I overheard. Going to take a little charm and confidence, as you can see. Let's call that one advanced level. But use that as inspiration and something to aspire to in the future. My final thoughts are that you should be dressed very decently, feel really good about your presentation when you're doing this, and a smile should come to your face as you approach this person. It's really not that you want to be walking around with one plastered on your face the entire time, because that does look a little creepy. Also, no phone in your hand. This should go without saying, obviously, but I'm saying it anyway. You're being intentional, and I don't want you distracted. Brush up on your lines in the car before you go into the grocery store if need be. And while you're there, do a little positive thinking and have a pep talk with yourself before you head inside. This is going to be fun. I'm going to go in there and grab a carton of eggs or a bag of apples, whatever you actually might need at the grocery store. And it'll be an interesting adventure if I see somebody interesting and start a conversation. The worst that can happen is they're not receptive, and that's about them, not about me. I don't really care about that. Positive talk can only be beneficial and help put you in the right frame of mind. Just think about the term pickup line. Pick up. This is an opportunity to pick up someone's spirits and give them a smile, even if you don't make a connection. You might want to check out this episode on flirting without being creepy that I made a while back. It could be helpful to you. But before you leave, don't forget to join Mom in her thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button as you leave. I'll look forward to seeing you back here again soon. And until next time, have a good one.